maybe some things I say are kind of serious, and I understand why they take offense to them, but most of the time it's just sarcasm. But in all actuality, that's what makes my videos go so viral, because there are thousands of comments of people complaining about the obvious joke or the obvious bait that I put in there for them to comment on. Like, for example, I'll speak Russian and then put the Kazakhstan flag to represent that, and everyone will lose their mind. 10,000 comments. That's not the flag of Russia, that's Kazakhstan. We have our own language in Kazakhstan.
Hello, language lovers. Welcome back to Lingocast, the podcast of your language journey. So today I have a very special guest, and we are recording also video. Not sure if I will publish the video. Let's see if I will manage to edit it. And today we have language, first name language, last name Simp. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Good to be here in Warsaw in real life with you. It's awesome. And yes, my name is Language Simp. That is my legal birth name, and I'm doing very well. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. I'm really happy. Like first time recording with video is a little bit different because after 2 years recording only audio is different to see myself like in the camera and know that usually people don't know how I look like, so it's kind of interesting to have it. And before we start talking with Language Simp, if you want to support our project, you can be part of our Patreon program and just choose the modality that fits the best to you. You can find the link in the description of the episode. And don't forget to follow us on all social media platforms and on your favorite podcast platform as well. So now you are ready to go. So the first thing I wanted to say, like 1 year ago, I talked with Math versus Japan, and he said, you need to talk with a guy called Language Sim, and I would like to know if he really thinks the things that he says. Like, who is the guy behind the character? And yeah, and here we are. Actually, when he talked about you, I didn't know who you were, so I needed to check. And actually, I knew who you were, but I didn't know. Didn't associate with the name.
Okay.
So the first question, before we start talking about you, I wanted to know: do you have any cultural shocks? How you find Poland?
I don't know. Poland just seems really calm and normal. I've eaten McDonald's for every single meal except for one where I had pierogies, but they were Ukrainian, I think. So food wise, the McDonald's is good, so I'm happy with that. As long as a country has McDonald's, I'm happy. And other than that, a lot of Russian speakers, which is definitely interesting. It's weird being in a region of the world where just Slavic languages are so prevalent. Like, I don't speak Polish, but I speak Russian, and it's cool to hear Polish and Ukrainian and Russian instead of American and Spanish and things like that. It's just refreshing, so I'm loving it.
Yeah, were you shocked when you arrived here and you heard so much Russian? Because some people they come here and they don't expect to hear so much Russian. Like there are so many people from, especially Ukraine and Belarus, but we hear Russian almost all the time here in Poland. And were you surprised, or you already expected it?
I don't really. I guess I was surprised. I guess Americans aren't very good at geography, so when I look at the map and I realize how close Warsaw is to Belarus, that blew my mind for sure. So it makes sense. And I've met some Belarusian people here, and it's very cool. I love it. It's so refreshing because Russian it's my favorite language, and it feels weird though to say like I'm in Poland and I'm enjoying the Russian more than the Polish, but I kind of am because Polish sounds kind of goofy.
Yeah, it's interesting. Also, like my girlfriend is Belarusian, and I live in kind of Russian speaking bubble because always when she recommends me places to go, they are always Russian speaking. So I go to have like my haircut in a place where everyone speaks Russian. I did like a piercing in a place where everyone was speaking Russian. So like, I kind of sometimes I forget that I live in Poland. It's kind of a different feeling, yeah.
Yeah, I see that.
So I wanted to know who is Language Simp and how did you get interested in languages?
How did I get interested in languages? It's actually a really easy story. Like it's just one thing. So back in 2019, I was a little lost. I was in engineering school, but I kind of knew I didn't want to be an engineer. And I watched one movie, which you might know, you might not know. It's pretty popular. It's called Inglorious Bastards. Have you seen it? Yeah, and in that movie, there's a bunch of different languages, mainly French, German, and Italian. But I fell in love with the French. I just thought it was the most gorgeous and pretentious, extravagant, luxurious thing that I'd ever heard. And the fact that people who weren't French natives were speaking it was very mind blowing to me because as an American, we all study Spanish. We all study Spanish in school, but no one actually learns it because we all suck. And we're all very stupid when it comes to languages. That's something everyone knows. But when I saw that, like, the idea came in my mind, oh, you can learn languages. I didn't realize you could actually do that. I didn't know that people learned languages to fluency, as stupid as that sounds. And from that day forward, I just said, wow, I need to learn French. So on January 1st, 2019, I started learning French and I just never looked back.
Yeah, that's interesting. You mentioned that Americans are not good at geography, and there is this stereotype that usually Americans do not speak foreign languages, but on and English speaking people in general, right? And but on the other hand, like I know so many amazing polyglots that are English speaking. Why do you think it happens like this phenomenon of so many amazing English speaking polyglots, but they go completely against the stereotype, or the stereotype is just not true? What do you think?
I think the stereotype is true
It's
just
true.
because we don't care because of geography. We're so isolated and have our big country. I mean, kind of like Brazil, right? In Brazil, you're very kind of isolated, huge country, and you guys mainly live on the coast. So why learn other languages? But so when you find a polyglot from America or from England, which has the same situation, you're just more impressed by it. So maybe they're not actually as good as the other polyglots. I think it's just I feel like I get a lot of slack when I speak languages because I'm American. I don't have to be as good as the guy from France or Germany just because they know the stereotypes.
hmm And also, I think in Europe, usually, like in the US, you have the same situation in Brazil. Like almost everyone has relatives or like a background from Europe, usually, and they usually do not understand why we do not speak the language from our ancestors. Like, for example, I have Italian family, and I learned Italian when I was already 18. And why in the US people like in the same way as in Brazil they do not speak the language of their ancestors, because there is a huge Polish community, Belarusian community, Italian community there, but usually people do not speak the languages from their ancestors.
Yeah, I think part of it's historic. I know there was a lot of racism and kind of segregation in that aspect. Like I don't know history that well, but I'm if I'm not mistaken, I think Polish Americans were pretty discriminated on back in the day. So I think there's an element of that to it as well as it's just English is the language of the world at this point, and I don't know if that's our fault or if that's England's fault. Probably a bit of both, but we just don't see a need.
hmm Yeah, everything is in English there, so it's, yeah, you don't actually need it. It's like in Russia as well, right? Like there is such a huge amount of content in Russian that you don't actually need English there. I think that's why many people do not learn English. But I wanted to ask something that I think everyone is wondering. I think sometimes in the language learning community, everything is so serious. People are talking so serious about methods, learning, and how did you come up with the idea of talking about it in a with humor, in like in a different way than how usually most of people approach it?
So, firstly, I am a big gamer, or at least was a lot more back in the day. Like, grew up playing video games and watching video game YouTube, and I feel like I borrowed the humor from video game culture and kind of applied that to an academic subject, and it just worked really well. But I think humor works really well with languages. I think it's inherently funny. Like when someone speaks with an accent and they make some phonetic mistake, it is funny. You know, people I think take it too serious and get depressed when they make mistakes and if someone laughs at them. But I learned to laugh at myself and I decided to kind of just show that to the world and it caught on.
That's interesting. Oh, another thing that you were saying when you were talking with Steve, that you have a very Gen Z humor.
Hmm.
And yesterday I was talking with a Brazilian polyglot, Natalia, and we were talking about how sometimes Gen Z are weird for us, that we do not understand them. I was born in 1995, but I'm from Brazil, so it's like the same as being born in 1988, because we are a
Why?
little bit, because everything in Brazil arrives later, and like so
Okay.
we are a little bit. I mean, maybe now it changed a bit, but back then it was not like that. And do you think that millennials or boomers have a little bit issue to understand that the humor and the way that you want to transmit the message, or no?
Um, I understand why, in theory, they shouldn't be able to understand it, but I think a lot of them do more than I'd expect. But I think a
hmm
big part of my videos is that there's a lot of layers to it. Like sometimes I'll watch a video I made months ago and I'll hear a joke I said and I'll say, "Holy crap! There's no way anyone understood that. That was so niche. Like you would have to be exactly 22 years old, living in this one part of France to understand that, or just something really niche." But I think it works because there's something for everyone. Because at least the big picture of my videos, I think you can understand, even if you're a boomer. And the proof that I have for that is that Steve Kaufman said he liked my videos. So
Yeah,
best moment of my life.
And he enjoyed like joking with you in the videos, and I think we saw a little bit different side of Steve there with you, because
Yeah.
usually always talking so seriously about comprehensible input and the methods about learning languages effectively. And we could see in that video with you, in both of them, like a different side of Steve, which was pretty good. And sometimes I think people forget that, or they do not know the polyglots and language learning contents, they're different than how they are in front of the camera. Like some different examples, like you've met Davide and
Yep.
Luca, and in my opinion they are very different in real life. They are very funny people.
Oh yeah.
They like storytelling, and but usually you are watching the videos, you do not see that often, especially in their channels. Maybe when they are in another channel you can see a little bit a different side of them. But I like how you approach the languages in a completely different way, and it brings a little bit a different vibe for the community. Vibe maybe is a very Gen Z word, yeah. Let's
Yeah, yeah. See, you're Gen Z. You're not 1988 or
the
whatever.
1988. Yeah. So the do you think that there are some people who they take the things that you say a little bit too serious and they get mad or something, or you haven't faced it yet?
It's less than you would imagine,
Mm-hmm.
believe it or not, but it definitely happens, and it happens a good amount. And I mean, maybe some things I say are kind of serious, and I understand why they take offense to them, but most of the time it's just sarcasm. But in all actuality, that's what makes my videos go so viral, because there are thousands of comments of people complaining about the obvious joke that, or the obvious bait that I put in there for them to comment on. Like, for example, I'll speak Russian and then put the Kazakhstan flag to represent that, and everyone will lose their mind. 10,000 comments. That's not the flag of Russia, that's Kazakhstan. We have our own language in Kazakhstan. And then other people debating them, saying, well, Russian is spoken in Kazakhstan. So it works out for me, and nothing's ever gotten too serious in terms of hate thus far. Let's hope it stays that way.
Yeah, do you know the thing about the Belarusian flags? That they have like kind of two flags, the official one and the one that people who do not support the government have. Like in
No.
Poland, you will see this white, red, white flag from Belarus that represents like the free Belarus. And when I went to the Polyglot gathering, they used the government flag. And then I posted a picture, and there are a lot of Belarusians who follow me because of the videos I was recording in
Hmm.
Belarusian. And they went crazy because on the Polyglot gathering thing, they had a government flag. And like, yeah, okay, chill. Then I made something there to fix it, but they took it so serious. Just and it was not even me who
Yeah,
created the thing.
you can't please everyone. And I think being a creator online, especially with global conflict everywhere and whatnot, it's really hard to, like, you have to separate, in the language sphere at least, the language and the celebration of the language versus the governments and wars and things like that. And we're all in this community to learn languages and have fun with them. We're not here to be political commentators. At least I'm not. I don't know if you are.
Mhm. No, yeah, I usually don't comment on politics. Sometimes I use the Russian flag that is the one that is not the governmental flag when I make some art or on the videos. But yeah, it is not the main goal. I think that actually people who are learning languages that we do not care so much about the politics because it's not the language has no fault when it comes to the
Hmm.
politics, right? Like, or many people, wow, why do you still learn Russian? Yeah, but it's not a fault of the
Yeah.
yeah, like my girlfriend is Russian speaking. She's not from Russia, and I have amazing friends from Russia that they do not support any the war or anything happening. So I think people confuse stuff, and I think everyone should take the language learning a little bit more with a little bit more of humor.
Definitely. It would help a lot of things.
Yes, and I wanted to a little bit more seriously. I wanted to know how if you start learning a language tomorrow, what would be your approach like to reach the D2 level that you say D1?
D1, D2,
D1
D2 hasn't been discovered
hasn't been
yet.
discovered.
There
Yeah,
might,
so
maybe D2 exists, but maybe that's like
yeah,
speaking while like floating and teleporting, flying, something
okay,
like that. But D1 is
D1.
what
Yeah.
I look for. Yeah.
So how? What's your approach? How would you start?
Well, I'd say that my method is largely a secret, but I would say in general, I just speak from day one and have fun with it, which is maybe not the way that a lot of people advocate for. A lot of people say you have to have input for months and whatnot, but I like to immediately go onto Google Translate and figure out how to say something silly, like not to be vulgar or anything, but one of the things that I first learned in Portuguese, your native language, was eu acho que o Bolsonaro é muito gostoso. And like, it's nonsense, but it's funny and it got the conversation started. So I just like to honestly memorize a few phrases and get myself into it because it's a lot more fun to look in the mirror and string together three sentences, even if it's like, hello, my name is Language, I'm from the United States, and I'm learning Russian. That's a lot more fun than spending months and months just trying to understand a little bit of the language in my eyes.
Hmm. That's interesting. And about Bolsonaro, did Brazilians understand the joke, or they took it seriously and you received some comments? Because it's politics is quite complicated topic
Of
there.
course, I mean, I switch it to Olule muito gostoso all the
Yeah.
time, so I don't.
Okay.
It's like it goes hand in hand. It's not a comment on politics, but I'd say I've probably said it to tens of thousands of Brazilians online, and probably like 100 Brazilians in real life. Only probably five have gotten mad at it, but then I explained. So
Mhm. And like I see that you take languages in a very chilled way and the language learning process. And what tips you have for people who are feeling overwhelmed now, that are trying to hurry up with the process and they feel that they cannot do, that it's not healthy for them anymore?
just take it slow. It's fun. Like who cares if you're D1 or B2 or whatever. I hate that system, by the way. Like I hate the A1 to C2 because it just stresses people out and people trying to watch their progression and whatnot. You can't compare yourself to people. There's an ultimate goal, and once you hit fluency, you're fluent. So there's not really. I don't think there should be this pressure to track your progress as much. I think you should have fun with it and also laugh at your own mistakes. As I believe I was saying earlier, it's funny if, in Spanish you say el instead of la in front of a feminine noun. People are going to laugh at you or chuckle or think it's goofy, but that is funny. And is the sooner you can accept that your mistakes are actually funny and making you progress, the sooner you will be able to keep it a stress-free hobby and have a lot of fun. And I'll add to that as a creator, it actually becomes more stressful when you learn languages because people are judging you. People are constantly asking me, how's your progress in this language? Did you stick with Polish? Have you been studying Hungarian? Blah, blah, blah. But I've realized that keep it carefree and you will succeed.
And as we're saying, I think that there are many moments when you're learning a language that are very remarkable, and sometimes just like mistakes. You said like a nonsense, and you will remember this moment forever, and you can actually laugh at it and take it in a fun way, right?
Oh yeah, when you make a mistake, you always remember it. I'm sure you remember mistakes you've made, and you'll never make the same mistake again, and it's very fun. And then when you do have those little good interactions, like a woman came up outside of Warsaw Centralna, or however you say it, and was asking me for money, and she asked it in Polish first. I shook my head like I didn't speak Polish. Then she asked it in Ukrainian, shook my head. Then she asked it in Russian, and I was very happy to give her 5 zloty or whatever it's called. But I'll never forget that moment because I was like, oh wow, I'm in Warsaw and I just got to use Russian, which I've been studying for so long.
It's interesting. So people here they think that you're Polish when they approach you.
I mean, do you think I look? I mean, I could be
Could
Polish,
be.
right? Like I don't think I'm just a white European guy. I'm ethnically like 80% German, but yeah, people greet me in Polish.
It's interesting because I have the opposite issue here. Like I
Yeah.
go to a restaurant, they refuse to talk in Polish to me because from the first moment they are already speaking in English. It's kind of I need to prove that my Polish is okay for them
Yeah.
to talk to them. Otherwise, they will not talk to me in Polish.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So let's imagine that you've been here. I've seen a picture you took about Esperanto line here in Poland. As in Warsaw, we have the Esperanto line. The Esperanto language was created in Poland. And if you could create your own language, like Simpish,
Hmm.
let's say, what funny feature would you give to this language?
Oh boy, that's so hard. I'll say right now, like I'm not a fan of constructed languages. They make me very upset. I'm not a big fan. Esperanto can. I'm not gonna swear on this podcast, but trust me, there's a lot I could say. I could go on a 50-minute rant about it. But honestly, I don't think I could make a language. I would just advocate for Tokipona being the world language. Are you familiar with Tokipona?
Donkey Pond, now.
It's a language that was made by a woman in Canada, which the U.S. is better than Canada. Just throwing it out there, but it only has like 140 words, and
Mm-hmm.
it's so simple, so anyone can learn it really, really fast. It's hard to say complex thoughts because each word is really basic, like water, hard, soft, sweet, big, small. There's no complex thoughts, so you have to string the words together to make a complex thought. But I love it as a global conlang because even though people aren't going to be perfect at describing complicated things, people from very different cultures can at least express the general ideas and get around. So I would maybe take Tokipona and just add some ancient Albanian sign language to it.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen Steve speaking some Albanian sign language, so it's really interesting. You should definitely check in the video.
Yeah, edit this part out, but Steve is not that great at ancient
Not that
Albanian
great.
sign language,
Okay.
honestly. His accent, he was understandable, but his accent was very thick.
Okay. Okay. So yeah. So where can people find some good examples of a good Albanian sign language?
Well, I have a video on my channel, Language Simp, which is a tutorial on how to speak the basics, and I think that's a good place to start.
Another question I wanted to ask you: if aliens arrive on Earth like tomorrow, and you meet them, what language would you teach them? Maybe besides American, because they already have to deal it in all U.S. American movies.
Geez, again, I think a Tokipona would be the
Tokipona would
best.
be the
Just
best.
teaching them because you touch something hard and you say the word for hard, and then they just get it. And yeah, the grammar's going to be wonky, and we're not going to be able to talk about microchips, microprocessors, and computers. But who cares? We don't have to. But other than that, probably American if we're
American.
not doing conlangs.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, it's easier so they can meet the other aliens in the movies.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
so okay, makes sense. And you know Gabriel, the polyglot, the Brazilian one,
Yes.
he sent you two questions.
All right.
And the first question he sent is, what do you think? Who do you think is the most charming polyglot in existence?
Oh man, that is difficult. I would okay. I would probably have to say Steve, honestly.
Steve.
And the
Oh,
reason I would say Steve Kaufman is because my mother watched the video of me and Steve recently, and she told me that she thought that he was just a very well-spoken and charismatic man, and that just solidified the idea that it's not just me that finds him to be awesome and incredibly charming. It's also, the ladies of the world.
okay, it's Steve. So, and then the second question he sent you is, if you could switch bodies and knowledge with any living polyglot, who would it be and why?
Oh, probably Luca Lampariello because his biceps are massive, and the dude knows like 20 languages very, very well, better than I'll ever know a language.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. So, Luca, if you agreed on switching bodies with Language Simp, is to have a proposal from him.
I don't think it works like that.
No.
I don't think we could, even if we wanted to.
Well, I'm not sure if he would accept, but maybe.
Maybe. I mean, we took a pic recently, and I think that I did look a little more muscular, so maybe
Okay.
he would want
Okay.
that. I'm just kidding. I mean, Luca, if you're listening to this, you're you're a big man. You're strong.
All right. And what message you have for people who are learning languages and they are taking it like just too serious, and how you think that they could have more fun with that? What message, like final message, you have for them?
A final message is just
Yeah.
calm down, homie. Like it's a fun thing. It's not the end of the world. Just take it slow and have fun with it. And yeah, people just get so caught up. What app should I be using? How many languages can I learn at one time? Which accent should I learn? I'm too nervous to speak. All these things. Just chill, homie. Do what you want. Do what makes you happy. There's a million ways to learn a language and have fun with it. Figure out what's fun for you, and you don't need to listen to other polyglots and take it like it's the Bible or some holy book. It's everyone will give their different recommendations. I encourage you to check out different things, but ultimately, you will succeed one way, shape, or form if you just stick with it. My biggest advice to anyone would be to study every single day, even if it's 5 minutes or 10 hours, however much you can do. You'll progress in no time.
Yeah, it's interesting. Recently, I've been watching the new course of Luca, and I will be making an episode about it. And something very interesting he said is when he met Richard Simcup, he found out that people can learn languages in an effective way using different methods. That there is no secret method because it can work different for different people. And like if Luca Lamparello said that, and I think like it's good for people to understand that everyone will learn different. Everyone has different tastes, right? And it's I feel a little bit pointless to people who try to learn through content that they do not find interesting, that they do not like.
Yes, and for example, like I have an eye problem, which I've talked about on my channel before, which makes it really hard for me to read. Like I can't read text for more than a few minutes, and if it's in another alphabet like Arabic or Russian, it's like impossible for me because like my eyes cross. There's a lazy eye thing. But so that's a good example. Like someone like Luca, he reads all the time, if I'm not mistaken. He's like cross translating things and very
Hmm.
text based. But for me, that's not even an option. Like I have to
Hmm.
use audio only and speaking with people. So that just kind of goes to show that that's solid proof that people can learn in very different ways.
Hmm. Also, something that I've been discussing with Luca and other people as well. What do you think makes a good, let's say, accent imitator, if we can say, like, what feature you think is natural, that people who have like good accent is natural, or is technique? What do you think that?
I like that question a lot because I think I do know the answer to that. And I think that what it is you have to not be afraid to imitate people and you have to not be afraid of being offensive. Like people from certain countries, they sound a certain way in their language. And some of them are kind of stereotypical, like Russian,
Hmm.
the kind of deep, like masculine thing. Russians love to say that their language doesn't sound masculine, but come on, like it's a little more masculine than Spanish from Spain. And then like Chinese, for example, I feel like people struggle to get a good accent in Mandarin because they're afraid of sounding stereotypically Chinese. They think it sounds problematic if they're imitating that, but it's not. So I think the best thing is you have to let that go and understand that they find it flattering. Everyone finds it flattering when you've learned the language and you have a good accent. So if you drop that fear, I think you'll do a lot better.
Awesome. And there are two questions, like standard questions I ask everyone who comes to Lingocast. And the first one is, what's your definition of fluency? When is someone fluent, and how to describe that?
So my definition of fluency is to not answer that question because I hate that idea just because people get so fixated on it. And I'm sure you understand what I'm saying. It's not
Hmm.
like I don't want to answer your question. It's just that if you think about that too much, you're going to slow down your progress because you're going to be so nervous all the time. And you're going to be, I remember when I was learning French, my first foreign language, I was so caught up about being fluent. And I called myself fluent before I was probably fluent. And that was kind of embarrassing. But now that I feel fluent, I don't say it. I think the best way to approach language learning is to undersell your abilities to everyone. Like if you go to a country and you speak really well, maybe say, oh, I speak all right, because then you're not going to be nervous about making a mistake. Because when you tell someone you're fluent and you forget if the word's masculine or feminine, you start to get nervous and you'll limit how you speak. You'll kind of hold yourself back.
I feel that the definition of fluency is very personal for to every person, right? It's like it's hard to have one definition. That's why I ask this question. And sometimes people ask, "But are you fluent in all these languages?" And I usually say, I mean, after some languages, especially when you're speaking similar languages, you will learn how to use the things you know. You optimize your knowledge in a way that make you sound more fluent than you actually are. So I would say I'm
Hmm.
not, but people say, "Oh, but you communicate." Yeah, but I would not consider that I have a huge knowledge. I just know how to use the things I know.
Oh, for sure, yeah. And like, for example, in Russian, if I talk to someone about languages, oh, I sound like I've lived in Russia my entire life. But the other day, someone started telling me in Russian how they work at a factory where they manufacture like insulin or something. And I don't know those words. Like, I've never, my input never included those words. So, am I fluent or am I not? I don't know. So, yeah, I hate saying that I'm fluent in anything.
Yeah, maybe also it depends on the topic, right? So even in
Hmm.
our mother tongue, we can struggle in a topic that we had never approached before. Yeah.
Exactly. And then I think also in addition to that, as a creator online, people are constantly wondering like, are you actually fluent in these languages? Are you really fluent in these languages? Because when you're making YouTube videos, they're highly edited usually, and then you've got little sound bites, and you can't really tell. So my idea and my proposal to polyglots who want to prove that they have a good language level is to blindfold themselves so that they're not reading a script and then not edit the video at all. That should be the new gold standard for demonstrating your language abilities.
Yeah, that sounds great, actually. Yeah, because but also sometimes people they want such an elaborate talk, and if you do not have a script, at least like you forget the things you would like to say, and it's
Yeah.
also challenging. Yeah.
And,
And,
and then also, maybe you're better at having a conversation. Like maybe I'd be better in the language speaking to you right here than I would be just delivering a monologue to a camera.
yeah, yeah, it's much more natural to talk to someone, and that's why I like actually the interviews. I found more interesting because I could just try to say about some anything, make a research and talk. But when I'm interviewing someone, I can hear like different stories, can catch the attention of who is listening to that. I think it's much more interesting. And when you use different languages, it's definitely maybe we do not need like such a high level in the language, but we can have more fun.
Yeah, certainly.
And the second question I always ask everyone is, what's your definition of polyglot? Like, who is a polyglot for you?
Ooh, I feel like that's a tough one. I never really thought about actually. What is a polyglot? I mean, if you go on Google, I think the definition varies from, 3 to 5 languages, but I would take a more liberal definition and say it's anyone who's interested in studying multiple languages because you never know when, as we said, fluency really happens or when you can even speak a language. So I'd say we should keep the term a little more inclusive and we should anyone who's studying or has studied 3 4 languages and wants to be a part of the community because it's nice that we have a word polyglot to define what we do, and I think the more people who fit under that umbrella the more inclusive and fun the community can be rather than this rat race and competition that it feels like all the time for how many languages you can speak. It can be a lot more fun that way.
Yeah, and you've been recently to the Polyglot conference, and sometimes some people say, I would like to go, but I'm not a polyglot.
Yes.
And you don't actually need to be. I think that the name can scare a little bit people,
Hmm.
right? So I believe that polyglot is more like a lifestyle that
Yes.
you have about being interested in languages. Sometimes people are content creators about language and they go so deep in one language. And like, why wouldn't they be able to go there and hang out with other people who like languages as well? I think sometimes the name polyglot scares a little bit people.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Richard Simcott and all the people who run the Polyglot conference, they're very inclusive. They make a big deal about that anyone can come, even if you only speak one language. That doesn't matter. And I mean, even me at the conference, like in terms of language talent, who am I compared to some of these people on stage? Some people are speaking 20 languages like perfectly, in my opinion, and I'm sitting here with a handful and but I know not to be intimidated by that, but I definitely see how some people could be. So if you're listening to this and you are worried about things like that and joining the community, coming to events, don't sweat it. Everyone will be nice to you. And I mean, I had hundreds of interactions at the conference, and not one of them was bad. And everyone else that I talked to who went loved it. So yeah, just don't worry about that stuff.
That's a really nice message for people who think about attending to a polyglot gathering, polyglot conference. So you don't actually need to be a polyglot, and you can just, if you're interested in languages, if you want to meet some content creators, if you are a content creator, I think why not? Can be very interesting for you. And at the end, sometimes I ask people questions in different languages, the languages we have in common. So what languages maybe? So, может быть, на русском языке?
No doubt.
Ну, один на русском. И почему ты начал изучать русский язык?
Потому что я смотрел видео из Bald and Bankrupt. Ты знаешь его?
Я не знаю.
Он ютубер из Англии.
Ага.
Он говорит по-русски. Он путешествует в России много.
Мгм.
И я думал, что это было круто. И вот именно я начал изучать русский язык.
Интересно. Em português?
Não fala muito bem,
Muito bem.
mas você pode.
Mas por que português brasileiro?
Eu gosto do sotaque brasileiro. Não sei, é muito funny. See, I don't know much Portuguese, but I love.
Engraçado, yeah?
Yeah, I knew the word. I just
Yeah.
didn't know to say it. But it's very. It's just so funny, honestly. Like the nasal sounds, and then what's that one accent where you guys have like the American R, like the.
Oh yeah, it's actually from the countryside in my state. People say like that, like Porta.
Yeah, like I
Yeah.
love that. It's just so funny, and the Portuguese from Portugal is just so. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and then most of my Portuguese friends here, there are a lot of Portuguese people in Warsaw, and they usually say like, "Oh, but do you speak Portuguese, the original one, or do you speak the Brazilian?"
Yeah.
And then maybe they're a little bit frustrated that the majority of people want to learn Brazilian Portuguese instead.
Hmm.
But I'm always joking with them that they speak European Brazilian because
They do, but they got. I made a language review for Portuguese recently, and a big Portuguese YouTuber got really mad at me and like made some videos about me and stuff. That was not fun. I feel unsafe in Portugal. I'm probably never going to go there.
Yeah, this is a very complicated topic when it comes to Brazilian Portuguese and European Portuguese.
Mm.
Yeah, so En français?
Oui, oui.
Et tu as appris le français de France, oui.
Oui, oui.
Et pourquoi pas le français canadien? Parce que t'es pas...
Bah, j'aime bien l'accent québécois, mais c'est
Oui.
juste que je sais pas, je voulais parler un peu genre comme les Français parce que je trouve que l'accent est un peu prétentieux
Mhm.
et j'adore ça. C'est juste que le français c'est très sophistiqué et ça m'appassionne.
Et comment c'est ça pour toi que tu parles anglais, mais en anglais, il y a beaucoup de mots qui sont françaises. Comment c'est pas pour toi que tu as appris le français, tu vois, c'est un mot français,
Non,
je ne savais
ça
pas.
c'est pas vrai. C'est les Français qui ont volé nos mots.
Ah oui,
Oui, oui.
ah ok. Donc, comme tu vois ça, que les Français utilisent des mots américains,
Comment ça s'est passé ou?
comment c'est pour ça? Comment tu vois ça, ces situations? C'est
Je, je-
étrange pour toi?
c'est un peu cringe
Pas cringe?
pour être honnête, mais ça va. J'aime les Français. On est des alliés donc ça va.
Ah, ok. And Spanish, maybe?
Sí, sí, sí.
Ok, bueno, yo no sé para ti, bueno, pero para mí español nunca fue muy útil. Es,
Pues para mí vivo en Estados Unidos y
sí,
mucha gente habla español, pero yo hablo con acento de España porque quería hablar más como alguien de otro continente porque
ujú.
es más interesante desde mi punto de vista. Desde mi punto de vista, cuando hablo con mexicanos, hay muchos mexicanos en mi país y es, no sé, es muy gracioso para ellos.
Ajá, y para ellos es raro o te preguntan por qué hablas como un español y no como un mexicano, por ejemplo.
Pues cometo muchos errores en español, no lo uso muy a menudo, no me gusta mucho en este momento, no sé por qué, pero les digo siempre que soy de España.
Mhm. Awesome. Yeah. So that's it. So before we finish, I have the last question that I always ask everyone. Who would you like to see on Lingocast?
That's an obviously Ikena.
I
He is
can.
an American YouTuber also who is an entrepreneur, and I think he would be fascinating to have on. You really should have him on. It would be a great discussion for sure.
Awesome. I'm very excited to talk to him and another American polyglot. Yeah. So
Yeah.
this
Oh
is a
yeah.
phenomenon. Like we need to study
Best
that.
phenomenon on the
Yeah.
planet. We need to make more. So if you're listening or watching from America, please start studying languages.
Yeah. Totally. So yeah. And where can people find you? Where can people find Language Sim?
I think everything is just called language simp on every platform except Instagram, which is the language simp. But I'm much more active on YouTube than anything else. But Instagram, if you want to see me travel around from time to time as well.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for being in this episode. This first episode that we are recording video.
Yeah,
And yeah,
awesome.
it's really cool. When first episode that I'm recording in person, also
Yeah,
very different. So I, I hope you are liking Poland
I love
and
Poland. I'm having
Europe.
a blast here, and it was awesome to be able to come here and do it in person. That was
Yeah.
really cool.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you. And hope to see you again and collaborate more.
I'm sure we will.